The tire screamed first, a sharp, ugly sound that cut through the rain and the steady hum of traffic. I hit the brakes so hard my seat belt burned into my shoulder, and the pickup slid a little on the wet asphalt before stopping sideways across the lane. Headlights flashed everywhere. White, yellow high beams. Horns. Someone swore behind me. It took a second for my eyes to adjust, and then I saw her. A small figure stood in the middle of the road. She was tiny, wearing a bright jacket that looked almost white under the lights. She wasn't crying yet. She was frozen, turned halfway toward the shoulder, like she had started running and forgot what came next. I heard myself yelling, even before I knew what words were coming out. A kid on the road. Stop! Stop! Cars began to slow, some too late, some swerving. The curve here was bad, a blind turn through trees, and the rain made everything worse. Water shimmered on the asphalt like glass. Then something moved on the right. Out of the darkness, from the wet brush and the metal guardrail, a shape burst forward. Big, fast, brown. Someone screamed bear. The word hit like a punch. A few drivers slammed their doors. One man shouted that it was going to attack. I saw a hand reach into the trunk of an SUV, fingers shaking. The bear didn't look at us. She crossed the road in 3 heavy steps and put herself between the child and the oncoming lane. Not facing the people, facing the traffic. Her back arched, fur soaked and dark, paws planted wide on the slick surface. A car came around the curve too fast. The driver swerved at the last second, tires spraying water, missing her by inches. The bear flinched but didn't run. She lowered her head and nudged the girl with her nose. Not hard, just enough to move her. The girl stumbled, almost fell, and that was when she started crying. Thin and sharp, lost under the noise of engines and rain. The bear shifted closer, blocking her again. I could see her sides heaving, breath fast, eyes fixed on the road. She reached out with one paw and caught the back of the child's jacket. Someone yelled she's grabbing her. I yelled no, she's pulling her back. The bear tugged once. The jacket held. The girl slid across the wet asphalt toward the shoulder, shoes scraping, hands flailing. The bear kept her body between the child and the cars the entire time. Another vehicle skidded, stopped short. Doors opened. Phones came up. Red dots blinked. The bear dragged the girl the last few feet and pushed her against the guardrail. Then she stood over her, legs wide, head low, a wall of muscle and fur. Nobody moved. Rain tapped on metal. Engines idled. The girl sobbed, pressed against the rail, eyes squeezed shut. The bear didn't touch her again. She lifted her head and looked at us for the first time. Not charging, not roaring, just watching. I realized my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the wheel. A man near me kept whispering, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." A woman shouted, "Call the police." Someone else yelled, "Call animal control." Another voice screamed, "Don't shoot." Blue and red lights appeared farther down the road, reflecting off the wet pavement. An ambulance pushed through the stopped cars, siren cutting in short bursts. The bear shifted her weight, but didn't leave. The ambulance doors flew open. Brooke jumped out, already pulling gloves on. She took in the scene in one sweep, then raised her voice over everything. Brooke saying, "Everyone stay where you are. Nobody run. Nobody get closer." She moved slowly toward the child, eyes never leaving the bear. Brooke saying, "I'm coming to you, sweetheart. Stay still." The girl's crying turned into hiccups. The bear lowered her head again, almost shielding the child with her neck. Brooke stopped a few steps away. Brooke saying, "It's okay. Easy, easy." For a moment, nobody breathed. Then the bear took one step back. Just one. She stayed there, soaked and massive on the edge of the road, watching Brooke reach the child and wrap her in a blanket. When Brooke lifted the girl into her arms, the bear did not follow. She didn't run either. She stayed by the guardrail, head turning slowly as if counting every person, every car, like she was waiting to see if we would finish what she had started. Morning came without any sense of relief, only a dull heaviness that settled deeper into the chest with every passing minute. The hospital smelled of disinfectant mixed with burnt coffee, the kind that had been sitting on a heater since dawn. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright and too steady after the chaos of the night. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket clearly meant for adults, her small feet dangling above the cold floor. Brooke stood nearby with a clipboard tucked against her side, watching Lily the way medics do when they are already thinking 2 steps ahead. Brooke saying she has scrapes, a mild concussion, and shock. Nothing life-threatening, but she needs rest and observation. Lily nodded slowly, as if each word had weight and needed time to land. A thin line of dried blood traced her hairline where her head had met the pavement. I leaned against the wall with Miles and another officer, close enough to hear everything, far enough to give space. No one wanted to leave yet, and no one really wanted to stay either. The door opened hard enough to hit the stopper. Rachel rushed in, hair still damp, jacket half-zipped, eyes red and unfocused. She crossed the room in a few fast steps and dropped to her knees in front of Lily, pulling her into a tight embrace. Rachel saying, "I told you not to run. I told you to stay where I could see you." Her voice cracked and folded in on itself before the sentence was finished. Her hands shook as she held her daughter. Rachel saying there was a bear. She lifted her head and looked at Brooke, then at Miles, anger flashing through the fear. Rachel saying, "Why was there a bear on the road? Why didn't anyone stop it?" Brooke kept her voice even. Brooke saying, "Let's slow this down. Your daughter is safe right now." Rachel turned when she noticed me standing there. Rachel saying, "You were there. You saw it. It went after her." I took a breath before answering. Me saying it didn't. Rachel stared at me like I was covering something up. Me saying it stood between her and the cars and pulled her back. Rachel shook her head, disbelief hardening her expression. Rachel saying, "Bears don't do that." Miles stepped forward, hands relaxed at his sides. Miles saying, "That's what we thought at first too. That's why we reviewed everything." He motioned toward the hallway. Miles saying, "We have video." The consultation room was small and windowless. Phones lay on the table like pieces of evidence from different lives. A dash camera, 2 shaky recordings filmed through windshields streaked with rain. Another clip caught from behind a steering wheel. Miles pressed play. Headlights washed the road in harsh white light. Lily appeared on the screen, small and frozen in the middle of the lane. Then movement from the shoulder. Rachel inhaled sharply. The footage continued. The bear crossed the road and stopped, placing her body sideways, her back to the people and her face toward the traffic. Miles slowed the video. You could see the moment clearly. The bear braced herself as a car sped past, her head lowered, muscles tense. Miles paused the frame. Miles saying, "Right here." The bear's paw was visible, hooked into the fabric of Lily's jacket. Miles saying, "That's not a strike. That's a pull." No one spoke. They watched another clip, then another. Each angle showed the same behavior from a different side. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Rachel saying she was trying to get her off the road. Her voice sounded distant, as if the realization had drained something out of her. Brooke nodded once. Brooke saying, "Animals don't think in our words, but behavior is behavior." Rachel sat back slowly, her hands falling into her lap. Rachel saying, "If that bear hadn't been there." She stopped before the sentence could end. The silence that followed felt heavier than the night before. Miles gathered the phones and slid them back into evidence bags. Miles saying, "There's another concern." He pulled up a still image taken after the ambulance arrived. Muddy tracks crossed near the guardrail. Smaller prints looped beside them. Miles saying, "Those aren't all from one animal." I leaned closer to the screen. Me saying, "A cub." Miles nodded. Miles saying, "Most likely." Rachel's eyes widened again. Rachel saying, "There's a baby bear out there." Miles saying, "Somewhere close to the road." Brooke exhaled slowly. Brooke saying, "That explains why she stayed." Miles folded his arms. Miles saying, "It also means she's been close to traffic before. Close enough to start treating the road as part of her space." Rachel swallowed hard. Rachel saying, "What happens now?" Miles didn't hesitate. Miles saying, "If someone sees her tonight and panics, she could get shot." The room went quiet. Outside, a gurney rolled past. Someone laughed down the hall. Life kept moving, indifferent. Rachel wiped her face with the back of her hand. Rachel saying, "She saved my child." She looked directly at Miles. Rachel saying, "Don't let them kill her." Miles met her gaze. Miles saying, "That's why we're going back out there." Only then did it fully sink in that this was no longer about what had happened the night before. It was about what was waiting near that curve in the road. Somewhere beyond the hospital walls, a bear was still close to the asphalt, and this time she was protecting more than one life. By midday the rain had stopped, but the road was still loud. Engines roared past in uneven waves, tires hissing on drying asphalt. Orange cones cut the lane in half, forcing traffic to slow as it curved through the trees. A patrol car sat angled across the shoulder, lights flashing without sirens, a constant reminder that something was wrong here. People had gathered anyway. Some stood behind their doors with phones raised. Others leaned on hoods, talking too loudly, pointing toward the forest. A few men had arrived with hunting jackets and folded arms, confidence sharp in their voices. Naomi stepped out of the van and stopped cold when she saw them. Naomi saying no. This is exactly what we are not doing. She walked straight toward the group, her voice cutting through the noise of traffic. Naomi saying if you shout, rush, or try to be brave, you will get someone hurt. Possibly yourself. Definitely the bear. One of the men scoffed. Man saying she was on the road. That's dangerous. Naomi didn't raise her voice. Naomi saying so are you. Right now? Miles moved in beside her, backing her presence with the badge. Miles saying anyone not part of this search needs to step back. Phones down. Reluctantly, people spread out. The noise dropped a little. Not silence, but closer. Naomi turned to the rest of us. Naomi saying we don't hunt her. We don't corner her. We let her see us and decide. She looked toward the guardrail where the road dipped slightly. Naomi saying if there's a cub, it's going to be low, sheltered, and stuck. We moved off the pavement and into the brush in a loose line, keeping distance between us. No one spoke. Every step was careful, deliberate. The smell of wet leaves and oil hung in the air. Cars continued to pass, slower now, drivers craning their necks to see. Then we heard it. A thin sound, barely louder than the wind through grass. Naomi froze and raised a hand. Naomi saying there. We listened. A soft, broken squeal came from beneath the guardrail, uneven and frantic. Naomi crouched and peered down the slope toward a concrete drainage channel that ran under the road. Water trickled through it, carrying leaves and trash. Naomi saying it's down there. The cub was wedged near the opening, one paw caught in a loop of plastic strapping tangled around debris. It twisted weakly, making the sound again. No one moved. The forest exploded with motion. Branches snapped. A dark shape surged from the trees. Bear. Someone behind us gasped loudly. Another person stumbled backward. The mother burst into the open and stopped short, placing herself between us and the cub. She huffed, a deep warning sound, and swung her head low. Miles raised his hand slowly. Miles saying easy. Easy. Naomi stayed crouched. Naomi saying she's not charging. The bear didn't look at us for long. Her focus stayed on the cub. She stepped closer to it, nudging with her nose, then turned her body sideways, blocking our view. Naomi whispered. Naomi saying same behavior as last night. The cub cried again, louder this time. The bear shifted, tried to pull it free with her mouth, then with a paw. The plastic held. She let out a short, sharp sound that made the hair on my arms rise. Naomi said nothing for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. Naomi saying she needs help, but she has to allow it. Traffic noise surged again as a truck passed. The bear flinched, instinctively pressing her body tighter against the cub. Naomi slowly slid her backpack off her shoulders and set it on the ground. Naomi saying I'm going to move closer. If she tells me no, I stop. Miles glanced at her. Miles saying we're with you. Naomi took one careful step forward. The bear lifted her head and fixed her eyes on Naomi. Not wild, not blind with rage. Sharp, calculating. Naomi stopped. Naomi saying I see you. I'm not here for you. She took another step. The bear shifted her weight, muscles tensing, but she did not advance. Naomi reached the edge of the channel and slowly extended her hand toward the plastic. The cub squealed. The bear moved instantly, swinging her head toward Naomi. Everyone tensed. Naomi froze mid-motion. Naomi saying okay. Okay. She held still, breathing shallow, eyes never leaving the bear. Seconds stretched unbearably long. Then the bear stopped. She stepped half a pace back, still blocking, still watching. Naomi exhaled. Naomi saying she's deciding. The cub cried again, weaker now. Naomi shifted her weight forward by inches. No one breathed. Because whatever happened next would decide whether this ended as a rescue or as a tragedy. 3 days later, the road felt as if it belonged to someone else. Even though it was the same curve, the same line of trees, and the same dull ribbon of asphalt cutting through the woods. I drove it anyway, and the ordinary look of it almost made my stomach turn, because the cones were gone, the shoulder was empty, and cars moved through as if nothing had ever happened there. At the rehab center, nothing looked ordinary, and nothing sounded easy. The building sat back from the highway on a gravel drive, surrounded by fencing and tall pines that swallowed sound and made the place feel sealed off from the rest of the world. A sign by the gate laid out the rules in plain language, and it left no room for arguing. No visitors without permission, no photos, no feeding, no exceptions. Inside, warm air carried a faint mix of antiseptic and hay, and the kind of quiet that comes from people working carefully around stressed animals. Naomi met us at the entrance, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, her eyes tired in a way that came from responsibility rather than lack of sleep. Naomi saying before we talk, "You need to understand something." She looked at me, then at Miles, then at Rachel, who had insisted on coming even after Miles warned her it would not be comforting. Naomi saying this is not a movie. This is a wild animal that had a bad day near a human road, and we're going to treat it like that. Rachel's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles stayed pale. Rachel saying, "Is the cub okay?" Naomi nodded once. Naomi saying dehydrated, stressed, superficial cuts from the plastic, but no fractures. We sedated briefly to remove the strapping and check vitals, and then we got it warm and quiet. Rachel exhaled and pressed her palm to her mouth as if she needed something solid to hold on to. Rachel saying, "And the mother." Naomi hesitated for a beat, choosing words that were accurate instead of soothing. Naomi saying she didn't walk into a trap because we didn't set one. She came close enough for us to help, and then she backed off when we gave space. Miles kept his voice low, practical. Miles saying, "Is she still near the road?" Naomi tilted her head toward a corridor that led to the back. Naomi saying, "We brought the cub here. The mother stayed in the area the first night, and then we tracked her the next 2 days. She's circling the same patch of woods." Rachel's face tightened, and the fear that had been sleeping behind her eyes woke up again. Rachel saying, "So you're keeping the cub?" Naomi didn't flinch, because she had clearly heard this argument before. Naomi saying temporarily, "Yes. Not because we want to keep it, but because if we release it at the shoulder, it crawls back to the noise and the smell of garbage, and then it gets hit." Rachel took a step forward like she had made up her mind mid-sentence. Rachel saying, "I can take it." The words landed hard in the quiet hallway. Rachel repeated herself faster, as if speed could turn instinct into a plan. Rachel saying, "I can take it home. I have a yard. I'll keep it safe." Naomi's eyes stayed steady, and her voice stayed level. Naomi saying no. Rachel's expression sharpened, anger rising as a shield. Rachel saying, "It saved my daughter's life, and you're acting like it's dangerous." Naomi answered without cruelty, but without softness either. Naomi saying, "It is dangerous. Not because it's evil, but because it's a bear. If you raise it, it becomes a bear that is not afraid of people, and that bear gets killed." Rachel opened her mouth and then closed it, because the truth didn't give her anything to push against. Naomi continued, quieter, as if she wanted Rachel to hear the outcome, not just the rule. Naomi saying, "And if it bites your child or your neighbor, everyone will blame the animal again. That's how this ends when people try to keep wild things." Miles cleared his throat, and the sound pulled all of us back to the other problem that had been growing outside the building. Miles saying, "Speaking of blame." He took his phone out and held the screen where Naomi could see it, and the flood was already there. Headlines, short clips, and comment threads moving so fast they looked like static. One video had been cut to make the bear look like a threat, stopping right at the moment her paw caught Lily's jacket, and leaving out the part where she turned her body to face the traffic. Another edit swung the other way. Dramatic music layered over shaky footage, calling her an angel as if that made the story safer. Miles scrolled with his jaw tight. Miles saying half the county thinks she's a man-eater. The other half thinks she's a saint. Naomi rubbed her forehead, the gesture of someone trying to keep a headache from turning into anger. Naomi saying both are wrong, and both can get her killed. She guided us toward a window that looked out over the back area, where fencing cut through trees and a quiet service lane disappeared into deeper forest. We didn't see the animals, and that seemed intentional, because distance was part of the care. Naomi spoke like she was forcing herself to stay in facts. Naomi saying she was a mother doing what mothers do, which is protecting. Rachel stared out the window, and when she spoke her voice had changed, stripped down. Rachel saying why was she there? Why that road? Naomi turned to Miles, because the answer had already been taking shape in reports and photos. Naomi saying tell her. Miles nodded, then spoke to Rachel with the same careful tone he had used all week. Miles saying we went back after the scene cleared. We walked the shoulder for almost a mile. He held up a printed photo from a folder, the kind used when phones weren't enough. Miles saying there used to be a wildlife underpass farther down, an old culvert widened years ago. It's blocked now, packed with debris and a fallen tree, and someone dumped construction scrap on top. Naomi added the next piece, sharper because it had human fingerprints all over it. Naomi saying, and the pull-off near the curve is full of trash. Fast food bags, fruit peels, a cooler someone dumped. People throw food out like the forest is a compost bin. Rachel's eyes flicked toward me, as if she needed to confirm that the explanation was real. Rachel saying, so she learned. Naomi nodded. Naomi saying she learned that the road smells like food, and she learned that the easiest path across is now the most dangerous one. Miles exhaled and sounded older than he had 3 days ago. Miles saying we requested cleanup and barriers, and we're pushing for it, but it won't happen overnight. Naomi folded her arms, because she had reached the point where talk had to turn into a decision. Naomi saying, which is why we have to do something nobody will like. Rachel's shoulders tensed. Rachel saying what? Naomi chose each word like it mattered. Naomi saying we don't release the cub immediately at the shoulder. We don't chase the mother deeper into town, and we don't wait for someone with a rifle to solve it. She looked at Miles. Naomi saying we plan a controlled reunification, and we move them toward a safer corridor. Miles didn't pretend the plan was gentle. Miles saying that could mean sedation. Naomi didn't deny it, because denial would have been the same as lying. Naomi saying it might, and it might also mean she refuses to come close again if we handle it wrong. Rachel's face pulled tight between gratitude and fear. Rachel saying, and if she doesn't let you? Naomi's voice dropped very low. Naomi saying, then we keep trying without pushing until we run out of options, because the truth is simple. If we do nothing, the road decides for us. Miles stared at the floor for a long moment, and when he looked up he sounded like someone already assembling a checklist in his head. Miles saying we'll need a team, a plan, and a clean day with no crowd. Naomi nodded. Naomi saying, and we'll need luck. Rachel's voice barely carried. Rachel saying when? Miles answered without giving comfort. Miles saying soon, before she comes back to that curve again. The weight of it sat on the room in a way I could almost feel on my shoulders. A mother bear had done one good thing in a bad place, and now every human around her had to prove they could do the same. We left with a plan that sounded right on paper, and with the uneasy knowledge that paper had never met a frightened bear on a roadside. A week later, the forest corridor was quiet in a way that felt intentional. There were no cones, no flashing lights, and no line of cars slowing to stare. Only a handful of vehicles were parked far back from the trees, placed where engines could be turned off and doors closed without echoing through the woods. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the road nearby felt farther away than it actually was. I arrived early and sat in my truck for a few minutes with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel without gripping it. I had not come back to be thanked or recognized, and I had no interest in standing anywhere that could be mistaken for a spotlight. I was there because unfinished things have a way of following you, and I needed to see where this one ended. Naomi moved quietly between people, checking spacing, reminding everyone with small gestures rather than words to keep distance and stay still. Miles stood off to one side with a radio clipped to his belt, using it only once to confirm that the road crew was standing by farther down the highway. No one spoke above a whisper. The cub had been brought close before dawn, transported without noise, and placed at the edge of the corridor where the trees thickened and the ground sloped gently downward. The plan was simple in theory and fragile in practice, because plans do not matter much to wild animals. Rachel stood with Lily a short distance behind the rest of us. Lily held her mother's hand, her grip tight but steady, eyes fixed on the line of trees. Time stretched. Birds moved. Leaves shifted. A breeze carried the distant sound of traffic and then took it away again. Naomi lifted her head slightly, listening. Naomi saying she's close. No one asked how she knew. A shape moved at the far edge of the trees, almost indistinguishable from shadow at first. Then it stepped forward, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The bear stood just inside the tree line, half in cover and half in open ground, her body angled so she could retreat or advance without turning her back on anything. She looked thinner than she had a week earlier, fur dulled by travel and stress, but her posture was the same as before, alert and deliberate. She did not rush. She scanned the clearing slowly, her head moving from side to side, taking inventory of every shape and sound. When her gaze reached the road, she paused, nostrils flaring, as if measuring the distance and remembering. I felt my shoulders tighten despite myself. Naomi stayed still, her hands open at her sides. Naomi sang easy. The cub made a small sound from the brush, a short, uncertain call that cut through the quiet. The bear's head snapped toward it immediately. She took one step forward, then stopped again, checking the space between herself and the people. Her body shifted, placing herself instinctively between the cub and the open ground. Seconds passed, heavy and fragile. Then she made her choice. She turned away from the road. The movement was subtle, almost disappointing in how ordinary it looked, but the meaning of it landed hard. She moved toward the cub, nudged it once with her nose, and then began to walk deeper into the corridor, pausing only to make sure the small shape followed. The cub stumbled, recovered, and hurried after her. They disappeared between the trees without drama, without sound, and without looking back. No one spoke for a long moment. When Naomi finally exhaled, it sounded like relief rather than victory. Miles nodded once, already pulling his phone out to send the next set of messages. Miles saying we'll move forward. Later that afternoon, the work began. Volunteers and road crews returned with gloves and bags, clearing trash from the pull-off and the shoulder where food and debris had collected for years. Warning signs went up near the curve, simple and unremarkable, and plans were drawn for restoring the blocked underpass that had once given animals a safer way across. None of it felt heroic. It felt overdue. As the sun lowered and the forest took on deeper color, Lily walked back toward the vehicles with Rachel. She stopped once and looked toward the trees, then back at Naomi. Lily saying I was scared. Naomi crouched to her level, listening. Lily thought for a moment. Lily saying she wasn't bad. She just didn't want me there. Naomi smiled, not wide, but real. Naomi saying that's a good way to say it. I stayed until the others began to leave, until the quiet returned and the corridor belonged only to itself again. When I finally drove away, I took the curve slowly, not because of signs or rules, but because memory had taught me something simple. Sometimes a wild animal makes the right decision faster than we do, and the only thing we owe them after that is the sense not to undo it. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories. And now just click the playlist or the next video on your screen.